Number 10. Steel cage match, brother. Okay, so it's the early 1900s and you're living in a rapidly growing city. Towers are popping up everywhere, and that means that there's less space for you and your baby to play in. Only if there was a way my baby could get fresh air and sunshine. Meet the baby cage. Yeah, a small metal cage with a tiny mattress for your baby. The said metal cage is suspended on your windowsill, making the baby suspend multiple stories above ground level. This is just a great idea. The idea behind this terrible idea was that the babies need fresh air and sunshine. Providing them with such was thought to improve their immune system and make them healthier. Besides the fact that the only thing separating your baby from becoming the worst rainfall event of the month was a thin metal cage. This is a prime example of why every product should be thoroughly tested and thought about before selling. Eventually, these did fall out of fashion, but in reality this wasn't that long ago, which is kind of crazy to think about. Number 9. Nuclear time. A lot happened in the 1900s. I mean, a lot. Couple wars here and there, the TV, the car. It was a busy century. A century full of discovery and invention. One such unusual invention was the radium dial, watches and clocks that were painted with luminescent paint, making the numbers and dials glow in the dark. Trouble with this new invention was the paint being used wasn't exactly safe, as it was made from radium. For the Breaking Bad nerds at home, radium is a highly radioactive element, even more so than the legendary uranium. So when a factory of women eager to get to work were told they were going to be painting watches with radioactive paint, do you think anyone asked for PPE? Truth be told, not everything was known about radium as it was only recently discovered, but what's so unusual is what factories told these women how to paint the watches. In order to give the brushes a fine tip, the women were instructed to use their lips to keep the brushes in perfect order, not knowing that day after day they were ingesting a very radioactive element. And in some sense of dark comedy, they sometimes had fun and painted their nails and on each other. I mean, it glowed in the dark, it was glow in the dark paint, it was new, it was cool. Over 50 women would become very sick from painting, and 12 sadly lost their lives. Number 8. I'm ready for my close-up. Ladies, this one's for you. In this day and age with social media, loving your self-image can be tough. There's tons of things that makeup companies and media do to make you want to be the people they want you to be. If you buy said product, of course. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't need all that. You're gorgeous just the way you are, and lately, honey, you've been slaying it. However, this marketing manipulation isn't new, and in the past, most certainly wasn't very subtle. Introducing the Beauty Micrometer, the latest from How to Horrify People Daily. It was actually invented by the famed beautician Max Factor Sr. Hell of a name. This steel cagey device was placed over a poor woman's head, to then mathematically calculate the flaws that would be adjusted using makeup products. Obviously these are no longer around, and for good reason. I don't even have a joke for that one, that's just weird. Number 7. Red dye number 2. My mom was not the best cook on planet Earth. That's just the truth. However, hold on, everyone jumps all over me. Her baking was out of this world. Cookies, banana bread, cupcakes, Yorkshire puddings. I had to stay quiet during that one. She said they'd never rise if I didn't be quiet. You name it, Mama Chetty, she made it great. She used all kinds of ingredients, except for anything with red dye number 2. She always said it wasn't good for me, partially because I was, well, a little tanky kid and hyper, but also because during the late 70s she was told that a certain red dye number 2 was extremely harmful. Some scientists believed it was carcinogenic. The red dye was in a lot of stuff, plus who can blame them with a mouth-watering name like red dye number 2? I want some just thinking about it. M&M's were so concerned with the rumor that they removed red from their palette of colors for a whole decade. Maybe mom was onto something. Number 6. Sega Genesis add-ons. While the Nintendo 64 disc drive was ridiculous, the Sega Genesis add-ons were 100% ludicrous and way worse in my opinion. Mainly with 2 key add-ons, the Sega CD, which saw more use than the Nintendo 64 disc drive, with such classics like Night Trap, which I'm not even sure what to classify that game as. It's a sleepover, and you got there's cameras, there's burglar. It's weird, I don't know. But besides that cult classic, there really isn't anything on there. There was also the 32X add-on that works with all your 16-bit Sega games, but also can enhance and has a select library of updated games for the 32X or 32-bit era. Sega was trying to keep the Genesis alive, and with those sales, you can't blame them. Sonic sells, baby. However, without a total support of these add-ons, lack of games, and being sold separately, it just wasn't as popular as well, the regular Genesis or as Sega would hope it to be. Also, not to mention, each add-on had to be separately powered, so that's 3 AC adapters you gotta plug in just to play on the couch with friends. Too much, dude. Too much. Number 5, the Go-Go Pillow. Okay, here's the scenario. You just sit down after a long day of work or school. You start flipping through TV stations and then you see an infomercial with a dad sitting down on his couch after a long day and he's trying to use his iPad, but it's out of his baby boomer capacity. That happens with technology sometimes. My mom, she needs help. So then a happy narrator introduces the Go-Go Pillow, the comfy pillow that helps you relax with your iPad. It has like 4 extra flaps of fabric to hold dad's iPad in. It holds it in place so that he can watch History Channel in peace. I would just like to argue that any pillow with extra flaps can achieve this. You don't really need this pillow. Really anything can hold it in place. This or anything with small grooves. It's all you need to hold your iPad. Also, you know, your hands or your arms. I mean, I'm lazy, but even I can still use that. Come on, Dad. Stop. Come on. Number 4, Zoomies. The powered glasses that act like binoculars. Perfect for bird watchers, hunters, concert goers that are stuck in the nosebleeds, grandma doing her needlework, or grandpa when he can't see the TV. Even though I swear old people can see, it's more of a hearing issue. Every old person I know, it's more, what did you say there, boy? A silly looking pair of glasses that promises enhanced vision, and in reality, well, they were just thick black glasses that not only looked ugly, but also according to user reviews, don't really work that well. And when the enhanced zoom feature is being used, the image is blurry, almost like as seen on TV products only work on TV and don't do what they say on the box at home. Number 3, Wilson! Some of you may have been cool enough back in 1975 to own a pet rock. Some of you may have not. Looking back, it doesn't really make any sense. Sure, everyone needs something to keep them company. Tom Hanks would have never gotten off the island he was stranded on if it wasn't for Wilson. Imagine a world without Tom Hanks. I, for one, would not want to live in such a world. All jokes aside, the pet rock was a genius marketing campaign, very similar to the fidget spinner of recent years. It's proof that if you can get a fad trade rolling, you can sell anything. Now who wants some of my bathwater? Number 2, Chef's Kiss. Okay, it's 1958. Times are good. Cars have cool fins on them. Elvis is on the radio, and most of my post-traumatic stress disorder has cleared up since the war was over. It's all great. Ah, yes, life is good. I can't wait to enjoy some modern cuisine. Well, let's see what's on the menu. I'll have to start with the frozen cheese salad. I'll have ham and banana hollandaise. And for dessert, I'll have the lime jello tuna pie. If that doesn't sound appetizing, I don't know what does. For some reason, halfway through the century, people just lost their taste buds. They were coming up with all kinds of disgusting foods. A lot of them are in low form for some strange reason. I think the grossest item that you can come across is a little invention called hongar. Sounds like somebody from Skyrim, but nay, good sir. Hongar is a mixture of honey and apple cider vinegar. It was thought to provide great health benefits. The only thing that would give me is a spot in front of the toilet refunding my breakfast. Number 1, Krümellauf. Germany was having a really hard time in World War II. United States, Canada, Britain, Australia, France, and Russia too were all coming to give the mustache man a piece of their mind. Heavily outnumbered, it was time for a miracle. Time to see what top German scientists had up their sleeve. We have a rifle that can shoot around the corners. Isn't it wunderbar? Yeah, this thing is real. A curved barrel called a Krümellauf, used for shooting around tight spaces like corners and out of tank hatches. During the waning years of the war, Germany was coming up with all kinds of crazy inventions to turn the tide. But a rifle that can shoot around corners probably isn't the answer. As mentioned above, the world was coming, and they needed a lot more than a fancy pants rifle to stop the Allies. History tells us that this invention did not work, as Mustache Man is no more. Number 10, the Smell-O-Vision. Oh, this is bad. We've come a long way since the dawn of filmmaking. Imagine all of your movies costing 5 cents and all in black and white with no sound. Ooh, what a time to be alive. Today, obviously, we have color, sound, virtual reality, and those moving boxes at the movies, which honestly I'm not crazy about. They shake too much. I'm not a big fan. Same with the 3D. Those glasses that we used to wear, we don't really do the 3D anymore. It was bad. Anyway, some people think that's not enough. Some people want more. Enter the Smell-O-Vision, created by a man named Hans Lube. I mean, that's just that just writes itself, doesn't it? The idea is that while you are watching a movie, you can smell the smells on screen. A field of grass, a car chase with burning rubber, a breakfast scene. My issue is what happens if I leave the Smell-O-Vision on and I fall asleep on the couch and reruns of Dirty Jobs comes on. Ooh, yucky. Or better yet, you guys have a smell-o-vision and you're watching my bloopers. Uh-oh, stinky. That would be very good, wouldn't it? Number 8, the black powder mousetrap. Mice. They're everywhere, and they suck. At least the wild ones. Some people got cute pets. So we place mouse traps to get rid of them. However, sometimes we get our fingers cut, which also sucks. Oh man, it hurts really bad. Or if you're a friend of Johnny Knoxville, it hurts all over. They do a lot of weird stuff with mouse traps. Love those guys. However, one design of mousetrap I think is the worst because it could potentially end your life is the black powder mousetrap. It was essentially just like ye olde cannons of the time. Black powder, big iron ball, except just on a much tinier scale. And in the house, because you know, having a cannon go off in the house is a great idea. Sure, let's just have that. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. Number 7, Back to the Future. During the technological boom of electronics in the 1980s, there was one invention I think is really unusual. Computers, camcorders, and even home video game consoles were becoming commonplace all over the world. People who are familiar with retro Nintendo consoles are familiar with the likes of Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, or Contra. You may even remember a certain gaming accessory involving a laughing dog every time you miss a duck. What 80s kids might not remember is the Konami Laser Scope. Similar to Nintendo's Zapper, but with 2 key differences. 1, it's a headset instead of a pistol. 2, it's voice controlled, meaning when you come across enemies in game, you have to shout fire to fire in game. The Konami Laser Scope was bold and tried to be ahead of its time, but when taking a good look at it, 1, it makes the user just look ridiculous, and 2, it doesn't work. Reviews for the headset are not favorable and just defeat the purpose of using a headset. Today we have VR headsets that may seem just as ridiculous, but they work, and the use of voice still isn't a primary control used in games today. Number 6, Battleship Woodchip. This is one of my favorites. Okay, hear me out for this one. Back in the 1940s, there was a really super not very fun expensive war happening. Germany, Japan, and Italy needed to go into the timeout corner. But after a while of people trying to put each other in the timeout corner, things were getting super expensive. World War II was fought on all fronts, land, sea, and air. The sea being a key part to the war victory in the beginning of the war. Literally tons of war goods and ships were being sunk by German U-boats every day across the Atlantic. So, in order to cut costs, what if the ships were built out of something cheaper, but just as tough as steel? Concrete, right? Nope, I bet you weren't thinking ice. Or more specifically, sawdust and ice mixed to form piecrete. Testing with piecrete had gone so well that in a super secret general meeting, piecrete was presented, shot at in the meeting, ricocheting a bullet causing another general a flesh wound. Having its defense capabilities proven in the war room, Operation Habakkuk was greenlit, and the Allies were planning on constructing an aircraft carrier made out of ice and sawdust to help thwart the German U-boats. However, this was scrapped, as a boat made of sawdust and ice would really not be much help against a German U-boat. Plus, where do you sleep? Can you cook on there? Way more questions than answers. Number 5. Hello there! Channeling our inner General Grievous, our number 5 spot belongs to the monowheel. Originally designed in the 19th century, it wasn't until the 20th century they slapped a motor on one of these bad boys and did their best escape attempt from Utapau. Sorry, I'm a Star Wars guy. It just looks like the vehicle from the 3rd movie, I can't help myself. In reality, the monocycle is a single-wheeled motorized vehicle where the driver either sits inside the wheel housing or right beside it. Today these vehicles are still around but really only used for entertainment purposes, as the design does have a few issues. One wheel gives balance issues, there's a visibility issue since, well, you know, you're usually sitting inside the wheel, and an issue called gerbling, which basically means if the driver brakes too hard, the inner ring will overcome its own gravity and the driver will do a full loop, similar to how a gerbil spins around on its wheel. Seeing that would make Monday morning traffic a lot more amusing though, I gotta say. Number 4. Deep breath, my equine friend. World War I was the war to end all wars, except for the 10 major wars that came after it. Noted for being the bloodiest and most destructive conflict at the time, it gave humanity a bunch of cool and exciting inventions, so long as they were not being used on you. One of the worst things to come out of the First World War was the extensive use of trench warfare and chemical weapons, or more specifically chlorine gas. Trench warfare was brutal, not only in its barbaric over-the-top charges into machine gun fire, but also in its living. Trenches had terrible living conditions, and were difficult to take from the enemy. Crossing no man's land was no joke. So, to eliminate the pesky enemies entrenched in their trenches, the very cruel chlorine gas was used, causing nausea, violent coughing, chest pain, and corneal burns. Just about everything you'd find on the back of normal medication, right? Gas masks helped when they were available, but unfortunately they were not the only living creatures on the battlefield. This is where our invention comes in. The very depressing invention of the horse gas mask. The idea is the same. Horses need protection too, and since World War I was still a war powered by horses, it was more common than you might think. And a lot of our equine friends perished alongside us. Number 3. Flying car. Maybe it's because we love the idea of breaking new ground, setting precedents, or we really just want to live with the Jetsons. It was a cool cartoon. The Mizar flying car was designed by a group of engineers in the early 1970s, using the very famous Ford Pinto like previously mentioned, because, well, it sucks on the ground, so it's gotta be good in the sky, right? Right, that makes sense. Well, no. Besides the mechanical issues, it would be a hard sell as, well, you know, the average American doesn't have flying experience, or not to mention a runway in their backyard. Plus, we have trouble with drones today. Imagine if it was raining Ford Pintos. Yikes. Mom, there's another Ford Pinto in the living room! It wouldn't go very well, would it? No. Number 2, the pet rock. This one's so stupid. It's just a rock. Legit, that's all it is. A fad about buying a rock and naming it. Oftentimes including those little googly eyes to make you believe it's alive, because yeah, okay. It's a ridiculous invention, it has no use. However, what it actually is a lesson in great marketing. Something weird enough that can be marketed quite easily, sold at an affordable price, and something that is already familiar with the people everywhere. So it actually makes sense, even if it is a bad invention. And number 1, this one, it's just so true, the Segway. About 15 years ago, these bad boys were all the rage. Basically, it's an electric scooter on 2 wheels with a handle to lean forward and lean back, or perhaps reverse. While there was some success in malls and airports, there wasn't that many in public. The main reason? Well, it's no different than a scooter or a bike, really, and well, it kind of feels like an attempt to reinvent the wheel when we don't need it. Also, in 2022, how many people do you know that have a Segway? Seriously. And if someone pulled up in a Segway to your hangout, it'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would be weird. Number 10, Nintendo 64 Disk Drive. For youths everywhere in the 90s, nothing really compared to the Nintendo 64. Sure, Sega was trying and Sony's brand new PlayStation was making waves in the video game market. And it had great games too, but pound for pound, the Nintendo 64 had it all. Amazing single-player games and multiplayer that literally paved the way forward for other games of the future. I mean, just listen to these games. Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Super Smash Bros., Star Wars Rogue Squadron, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, Mario Kart 64, Mario Party, WWF No Mercy. That one's one of my favorites, brother. I mean, that is just a few of the games to mention. It truly was an amazing console, and for the first try at 3D, very, very impressive. Well, how could it be on this list then if it was so great, Chetty, you're probably saying to yourself? Well, in case you didn't know, in the late 90s, well, it was changing times and CD-ROMs were all the rage. This is why in secret Nintendo was developing an attachment for the Nintendo 64 that would play disc games. However, after a troubled development and skeptical sales, it was only released in Japan, like a lot of good things. This was not one of them. Where it sold poorly as only 9 games were ever made for it, making one of the most beloved consoles of all time. Well, it left it with an ugly blemish on its legacy. Number 9, Aquanotes. It sounds strange, but a lot of good ideas come from the shower. Maybe it's the isolation, maybe it's the smell of Irish Spring, or a hot shower on a cold winter's day. Oh, it's one of my favorites. But for some strange reason, a lot of people's best ideas come to you in the shower. Who would have thought? For me, it's jokes. As a comedian, I'm always thinking about stuff like that, and I swear I've come up with some real gems in the shower. It's too bad though that when I get out of the shower, I forget. Too bad when I get out of the shower, I forgot. Oh man. Well, clearly I need the Aquanotes, a waterproof notepad so I can write down my thoughts and thinks without my Blue's Clues notepad getting waterlogged. Oh, sounds great, right? Okay, sure, I guess it's helpful, but if I was using someone's shower and they had a notepad in their shower, well, it would be strange. Hey, sorry whoever uses this next. Shave my back hair and clog the drain. Sorry, XOXO. It's just a weird invention. It's not good. Number 8, new Coca-Cola. To me, there's nothing better than sitting in the hot summer sun, slathered in sunscreen, in my Muskoka chair because I'm a Canadian, and beside me is an ice cold Coke. I love beer, but there's just something about it I love. Cheers, Coca-Cola fans. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Now, I like the original recipe the most. However, cherry and vanilla are great. I'm just a vanilla guy. During the 1980s, Coke made a bold decision and released a new Coke formula. It was a bold decade, so, had to make moves. In 1985, the new formula made it past testers, but when it reached the public, there was literal public outcry to bring back the old stuff. The good stuff. Only a few short months later, shelves are restocked with classic Coke, bringing back the old formula, which may have also been a genius marketing technique. Number 7. The baby cage. Living in large cities can be difficult. Toronto being the 3rd largest in North America, well, I can relate. It's crazy we're that big. Things get busy even in the suburbs here. There's a hustle and a bustle that small cities and towns just don't get. Now, back in the early 20th century, this was still the case, except there wasn't the same emphasis on park life, biking, and enjoying what fresh air actually is in the city like there is in modern cities today. We've done better since then. And there's nothing more important than fresh air for babies, so that's why in the 1920s the baby cage was invented. Basically, it was a wire cage that hangs out of your 5th floor apartment window, like that massive AC unit that hasn't worked properly since McDonald's ran out of Szechuan sauce. Obviously, I don't need to tell you why this is a bad idea, and not too long after, it was outlawed. It's just that's high up, it could drop, bad idea, not a good idea. Number 6, this one's for the older crowd, the Ford Pinto. Remember those bad boys? I never had the pleasure of being in one or owning one myself, but I swear to God, every time my family got together, the men would sit around and talk about cars that they own. It's kind of a man thing to do, I guess. Even though they all had the same conversation the last time, which is like only a couple months ago. And one model that always comes up is the Ford Pinto. Today cars get recalled all the time, but in the age of affordable family vehicles and quality, the Ford Pinto stood out. Especially because there was a chance the Pinto could burst into flames, which is arguably the worst thing a car could do. Besides not work. I'd argue not working is better than bursting into flames. A few other major issues really set back what I think is a very sleek and appealing vehicle to both mom and dad and the family. Number 5, the spaghetti fork. Ma, make sure you put my special spaghetti fork on the table. I need to eat my pasta and gabagool. Italians and lovers of the best cuisine on earth, in my opinion, I love Italian cuisine, get ready to cringe. The twirling spaghetti fork is a battery operated fork that twirls when you push a button, so you no longer suffer the burden of twirling your own spaghetti. Listen, I'm a big dude, I'm lazy, I love staying in after a long week of work and playing video games, probably my favorite thing to do. Yeah, sometimes I order in because I don't feel like getting up, but not twirling mom's spaghetti? Come on, twirling the spaghetti, I argue that's the best part. No dinner with no should require AA batteries in my opinion, I'm just saying. You bring a fork, why you bring us a fork? Number 4, hydrogen blimps. It really must have been something to witness humans gaining flight. Something so previously impossible was now not only possible, but something that you had to pay money for, which is how you know it was very successful. Large jumbo jets full of croc-wearing tours headed to Slav attractions was still a thing of the future. We're not there yet. This is still the early 1900s. We'll get there. So how do we get people to places in large numbers and still manage to be opulent? Said a bunch of people in the early 1900s. Airships, said Germany, who took the blimp game to the next level. However, a lot of these blimps made a cut in their design, if you will. To help save on money, the airships were filled with the much more cheaper hydrogen, which in large quantities is extremely volatile. The Hindenburg is a great example. Well, we could fill it with a safe fuel, but it's really expensive, but we could fill it with the fuel that could destroy the whole thing, and that's like 10 times cheaper. Well, I'll fill it with that then, why would you not? Number 3, the better marriage blanket. We've all been there. It's late at night, husband and wife are getting ready for bed. That's when the man of the house in all his handsomeness rolls over and lets one rip with a thunderous cheek-clapping wind. Gross, dude. Not like I'd ever do that, right, Chris? Not only did he just ruin the feng shui of the nightly reading, but he also let the stench in the sheets. Ugh, gross. Well, not anymore. With the better marriage blanket that claims it's made with the military technology to help sift out a husband's, barbecue beer flatulence. As much as wives, girlfriends everywhere would be throwing money at a product like that, it doesn't really work that way. The truth of the matter is, some men, husbands, and fathers have superpowers, and no bedsheet ordered with a bad credit card is going to fix that. Number 2, ShamWow. Does this really need an introduction? In the late 2000s, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing Vince the ShamWow guy. earning fame as the orange rag that cleans up all messes at car and boat shows. Eventually it earned a commercial that seemed to play non-stop, or at least from my memory it did. A towel that can seemingly clean up any mess, water, juice, cola, wine, and grab it right through the carpet with a simple pat. It's very simple, very beautiful. One for the house, one for the RV, and one for the boat, said middle class America. Too bad it wasn't enough to clean up the legal mess that Vince the ShamWhale guy got himself into. Uh-oh, where's the OxyClean when you need it? And finally in our number 1 spot, sauna pants. Lastly today we have the sauna pants, the latest in weight loss technology that doesn't work. Oh, what? Your grandma probably had a belt sander version of this that would basically just strap around you and vibrate the person all over to lose weight. But despite all that vigorous shaking, she was still the same at bingo night. What? I know, right? Crazy. Well, the sauna pants boast the same thing. You sit back, relax, and let the sweat do the work. A ridiculous looking pair of pants that has to be plugged in. Sizes don't fit all, which is kind of silly. If people are trying to lose weight, you'd think there would be bigger sizes. Not that I want a pair or anything. And of course, it just doesn't work. Unless you were trying to make a very interesting stain in the couch, then that would work, absolutely.